So this is a clip for Halloween, all about getting witchy with flowers. But if you're new to the channel, you're very welcome. Please do subscribe, press the bell icon, and we'll tell you when we've got more clips coming up. And if any of the tips and tricks we give you along the way are useful, you can always buy me a coffee, or better still, join my club. The links to coffee buying and club membership are in the blurb to all my clips. Come along and join the ride. So this is going to be a clip about releasing your inner witch. I think we are all full of wisdom and intelligence and very strong instincts, especially if we don't feel like we can trust our instincts. Find people who are very closely connected to the earth, gardeners, flower farmers, people, hedge layers, people who work with the seasons and the ground. I always think that sometimes you get people who are so closely related to the ground that it feels as though they manifest themselves. They kind of grow out of the ground like a mushroom in the morning, and at night they shrink back into the ground. They become part of the ground. And this may sound really mad, but it's only a way of describing a feeling. So let's think about releasing your inner witchiness. And while I talk, I'm going to make an arrangement for number one, Bruton. And I was going to just cut all the dahlias and just plonk them all in a vase and they could have loads of colour. But actually, thinking about Halloween today, I was always very inspired by what's actually going on as I cut. So I've cut a witchy collection, dark velvet colours, smoky nighttime colours, and I'm going to put them all together in a vase. So I hope you enjoy the arrangement. But while I do it, I thought I'd talk about what I've cut and how I want us all to do this, can go outside and stand firm on the ground and feel the earth rising, and think about what it is about you that people might call witchy, possibly to your detriment and not as a compliment. But also think about the things that define your character, which people might use as a compliment when describing you as witchy. Your good instincts, your wisdom, the things that you know because you have stood under the moon and breathed the air, the perspective you have because you can see a bigger picture. Anyway, I'm going to make an arrangement, and I've got my microphone on, so I'm just going to talk and florist as I go. Put you back a little bit so you can see what I'm doing. I need a compost bucket. It's even a purple witchy compost bucket. I have got, look at these lovely witchy colours. All the dark dahlias. Woo-hoo-hoo. But also the same tones make for pale pinks and whites. So this is Labyrinth two-tone. Oh, be still my beating heart. I have loved her all summer, along with Blackjack, who's my great favourite in life. This one people often ask about. This is Liquid Desire. Oh yes, it is, but quite witchy colours, but not necessarily unattractive. Witches are not, so there comes our first point, witches are not necessarily scary or ugly. They can be very beautiful. And somebody who doesn't like witches might say that they were dangerously beguiling, but that's because they find them scary. Somebody who likes this person might say they're just beguiling. Not dangerously beguiling, just beguiling, beautiful. One wants to get closer, not in a dangerous way. This is not Baba Yaga who might eat you up. And I have also got some lovely foliage, including, of course, elder. So this is black elder, Sambucus nigra. Elder, one must always ask if one is going to cut elder from a tree. It tends to be very, very floppy in the summer. I wouldn't recommend it as a cut foliage in the summer. But in early spring, when the leaves are just unfurling, holds very nicely in water. And in autumn, when the sap has stopped rising, it will also hold nicely in water. It may also shed. But that's the normal the normal thing, the normal scale of things. At this time of year, leaves fall. So it's telling a truth, which I like. So I'm going to start by putting some foliage in. And I'm going to... Where are my snips? In my pocket. Miracle of miracles. And I'm putting all these flowers... I'm putting these flowers in a French water container, stoneware, which is the kind of thing a lady who lived in a cottage, possibly on her own, indulging her own wisdom, might have had for many hundreds of years in the French countryside and all around the world. People have kept water cool in stoneware jars like this. So I quite like putting my Halloween witchy arrangement in a stoneware jar. So I did, of course, ask the elder. I actually stood there and I said, do you mind if I have a bit? And the elder didn't say anything. Once I asked and the elder didn't say anything, but I got stung by nettles. And so I took that as an advice that I'd had enough and I stopped. Seemed fair enough. This is spindle. Now here's a witchy thing. Spindle wood was used to make spindles for making thread. And the reason they're called spindles is because they were made from spindle wood. And if you have a spinny, it's a shortening of spindle. A spinny might be a little wood made of spindle trees. Very valuable if they have very hard wood, which can be turned into machines that you can use to spin. And in the far off distant days, you'd have a distaff, which would be what you would spin with, made out of spindle wood. And that's why when you get married, the distaff side is the wife's side of the church. And you'll note that the wife's side of the church is the left side, which is the sinister side, sinistre. So women and the things that they have been associated with have often been on the sinister side. Anyway, the distaff side also means on the woman's side of a family. So we're going to have some spindle, lovely, beautiful berries. Can you see the little orange and red berries? Beautiful berries. Tuck them in. I'm going to chuck a bit more in. This is for Number One Bruton, which is a hotel in Bruton where when the Rees family, who are the current owners, restored the building, in the attics they found signs carved into the beams and the ceilings which were anti-witchery, or were they actually part of a coven? I think if you tell people they're a witch, if you tell somebody they are something for long enough, then they believe you. They might believe you. So for women who've been told they were witches or witchy, or it was witchy of them to think things, why would they, many of them were like, well, okay, why would I not believe that? I'm being told that, but with great authority by somebody else. But some of them, I think the ones that got into real trouble and ended up on a ducking stool or being burned at the stake were the women who said, this is perfectly ridiculous. All I'm doing is telling you that it's going to freeze, so look after your crops. Or, they can smell the weather, or they know what's going to happen. They are wise. They know how the herbs and the material that they work with work. They can advise things. Lovely. So, in the past, I think one became a witch. One was often described as a witch because... Oh, hello. I'll just put you in there's a little person here. I'm going to put them in the compost heap. In you go. And the men by whom they were surrounded found it disconcerting that women could have such wise answers when they were possibly couldn't read or write. They shouldn't have known stuff. And anyway, the answers they were giving, or the opinions they were giving, were not necessarily to the benefit of the men. And often what women do is they say something like, don't be ridiculous, that's just silly. Wouldn't it be more sensible to do something a different way? And in a patriarchal system, even though the men may take that opinion and then go, that's ridiculous, that's just silly, don't do it that way, they don't like being told that by a woman. And so that's where some of the witchiness comes in. So when one is wise and one says something sensible, in the far off distant past, one might have been called a witch. When one understood something and had an opinion, one disagreed with a system which excluded one or tied one to the hearth or didn't allow one to earn one's living in the way that one would have liked. One lived in a world in which, unless one married somebody and had children, one had no social standing. For the people who decided they'd rather not do that, or that being married might, in fact, they'd be sold a pup by being married, those people, for the people who decided that they were not going to make themselves beautiful according to somebody else's rule, or basically play somebody else's game, often those women were called witches. And somebody would find an excuse like, she knew it was going to freeze. She's got herbs hanging up in her attic. She likes to have a cat sit on her knee at night and keep her warm. And this is my favourite one. In the far off distant past, women were sometimes accused of being witches because they went for a walk in the night. They were found walking around at night. Now, I can tell you, as a menopausal woman myself, often I sleep very badly. And if I'm wide awake, it's boring lying in bed wide awake. And if it's a full moon, I'm more likely to be wide awake than at other times of the lunar cycle. If I lived in a one-bedroom house, a one-room shack, with my entire family surrounding me, and I were wide awake all night, and the moon was shining through the window, rather than wake everybody else up with my tossing and turning and gnashing my teeth because I was bored, I might just get up, put my shoes on and go for a walk, because it's lovely. I love going for a walk when the moon is full. And that woman, if somebody had taken a gin her, that woman might find that she was described as a witch. Just because she was being nice and going for a walk to save everybody else from being kept awake by her tossing and turning. And the thing about going for a walk when it's in the moonlight is one has lots of time to think. Look at that blackjack. Oh, quelle beauté. One has lots of time to think and consider. And so therefore one might develop a little wisdom. One might have an intelligent point of view, something useful to say. And if that didn't match what the gentlemen elders of the village or the town had decided was the point of view, then one risked being called a witch. And so then what happens over many generations, centuries, is what women learn to do is to fit in. It's called people pleasing. We learn to fit in, and in order to fit in, we often conform to societal norms. And over the years, the societal norms have decided that women ought to be pretty. I was never going to do that much. Women ought to be compliant. Women ought to let other people tell them that they weren't clever enough to make their own decisions, and they would let other people. So the women, in order to survive, because otherwise you're going to get ducked on a stool or worse, burned as a witch. So in order to survive, the women became compliant. Not all of them, obviously, but many people became compliant and good and were very praised for being so successful at being compliant and good, which is how you end up with generations of women walking around in agonisingly high heels, which are too small because you're trying to make your feet look tiny, and you're tottering about, you can't run, you are literally preventing yourself from being athletic, useful, being able to actually pick things up, move things around, create anything, because you're teetering around on very high heels, or wearing uncomfortable clothes, or being freezing cold because you're wearing some lovely dress that people tell you you're beautiful. You're freezing. Or, you know, a number of other things. That's being compliant and playing the game. Whereas the witchy ones, you, me, might have said, excuse me, it's too cold. I'm going to wear a sweater. Sorry if it doesn't make me pretty enough. And also, I can't do the physical activity things I want to do if I'm wearing those heels. So I'm just going to wear boots. And that makes us difficult, a little bit difficult. And so therefore more likely to be accused, because we're being difficult, accused of being a witch. So basically, you end up being called a witch by your neighbours, your friends, your family, because you're not playing a game, a culturally normal game. So that's really annoying. So now you get people saying, oh, she's such a witch. Whereas I think people should say, oh, she's such a witch. Instead of saying she's a witch because she's mean and nasty and doesn't agree with the societal norms, people should say, oh, she's a witch because she's wise and intelligent. And all that walking around in the night has given her time to think and process information and allow herself to become wise. I know I'm banging on a bit, but you get what I'm saying. Who amongst us, ladies, obviously some of you gents may feel like this too, but who amongst us has never been called a witch? Don't be witchy. Don't be a witch. Oh. And I always thought that was very rude. I don't want to be a witch. I don't want to be witchy. Actually, now I'm 57 years old. And I spend a lot of time walking around under the moonlight at night. And I'm grateful that I live in a time when I'm not going to be dunked on a stool or burned at the stake. Because I do that. I'm going to embrace my inner witch. I'm going to allow myself some wisdom, and even more shocking, I'm going to share it with you. Right, I'm going to turn this off and finish this off, and I'll show you my witchy arrangement, but otherwise I'm going to be talking for years. So there it is, almost finished, and I've decided against using any of the paler coloured dahlias, and I need one more swirl of, I need something to go up here, so I'm going back for one more piece of elder, if the elder will let me. There we are. Very happy with that. So carrying on the witchy theme, I'm just making a piece for number one. Bruton has a new restaurant called The Briar, which has an arrangement every fortnight of green twiggery pokery, not flowers, okay? And I was thinking about what makes one witchy. And I think what happens is we have a culture which, in order to make everybody feel comfortable, we all fit societal norms. And we feel more or less pressure to fit those societal norms. If we're very lucky, I am part of that, I'm very lucky in that I recognise that there are societal norms, and I look at them and I choose the ones with which I'm going to engage. So I'm not going I'm gonna, do my best not to murder anybody, and I'm not gonna steal anything from my neighbour, and I'm gonna send my kids to school, and I'm gonna pay my taxes, all of that stuff, so that society can work. So there's societal norms, but there are some things that I don't really agree with, like wearing high heels or dyeing my hair or wearing makeup, because I'm allergic to makeup. But even then, why would I want to paint my face to make myself look like somebody I'm not? Some people really enjoy it and it's enormously creative and great. So I'm not judging anybody who does, but I'm making a choice not to wear makeup. So that possibly sets me on a road of slight witchiness. Flat shoes, comfortable shoes, no makeup. So I'm breaking, very small way, societal rules. And by doing that, I can be accused by people of wanting to have it all. And it is, I do want to have it all, and I want to have it all on my own terms. I don't want to have a Rolex watch or a fancy, great big expensive car or diamonds. I love a diamond, but I don't want to, that's not what's driving me. So I'm not driven by a desire for stuff or for things that prove that I'm success within normal society, following societal norms. Do you see? I don't have to be thin. I don't have to dye my hair. I don't have to try and look younger than I am, which I always think is completely ridiculous. We earn our faces. Be proud of your face. You've earned it. So, and that makes people feel as though I'm just having it all because I'm having a nice time, not having the things that the societal norms might say that I should want. So I'm becoming weirder and weirder and a little bit more witchy. And so then I really break the mold and I become very witchy by saying I'm going to have a business which grows flowers for sale. That's allowed. That's absolutely allowed. What people struggle with is somebody like me having a business growing flowers for sale and making enough money. And I think there are a lot of people out there who grow flowers for sale who struggle to allow themselves to be businesslike, because somewhere along the line they feel that being businesslike makes them less likable. They're less people-pleasy. Yeah, I know. I had a boyfriend once, and this when I wrote my first novel. I wrote a series of novels under my proper name, Georgina Newbury, because I was a very good girl in those days. And I wrote 3 novels called Catwalk, Think Pink, and Sand and Slingbacks. And they were great fun. They were about a supermodel called Pandora Williams, who has such long eyelashes. She measured them when she was miserable. Anyway, she was great. I loved her. Anyway, I was sitting down to write my first novel, and my boyfriend at the time looked at me in amazement. He was a lawyer. And he looked at me in amazement and he said, "What makes you think you can do this?" And I remember he was really, really offended by the fact that I was going to chuck in a perfectly well-paid job at John Galliano, the fashion designer, and write a novel. And I didn't know what made me think I could do it. All I knew was that I had been writing all my life. I had read, still books are the single, you may think that I love flowers. I love flowers, but I really love books more. So it wasn't that I thought I could do it. It was that I thought, why not have a go? I'd have a go. If you don't have a go, you'll never know. I might fail, but at least I'll have had a go. I might win. And then if I hadn't had a go, I would never have won. Anyway, he was very upset by the fact that I was going to chuck in a perfectly reasonable job and write a novel. "What makes you think you can do this?" he said. And I think it was my instinct. It was my inner witchy. He didn't like it. He really didn't like it. He found it very threatening that I was going to chuck in a perfectly reasonable job and write a novel. We split up not long after that. It wasn't right. If anybody was going to do something exciting and interesting, it was going to be possibly him. Oh, not that. That's unfair. But he really found it very threatening that I had done that. So what makes it... So I set up a business selling flowers, and another very old friend of mine, when I set up a business making flowers, selling flowers, said, "But you're never going to make any money." And I was like, well, I might not make money on your terms, but I'll work very hard and see if I can make enough on my terms. And again, a bit threatened by that. So that's where people become a bit witchy, because they're threatening. They're breaking the rules. And what happens is, and then I think one becomes properly a witch. Sorry, you can see I wrote it all down. This is so important to me. One breaks the rules and that makes it work. So Adrian's saying, what makes you think you can do that? And Ian saying, but you'll never make any money. They said this with great authority. You can't. What makes it, no, don't be silly. And I go ahead and do it, and I achieve my objective. I'm very straightforward, I'm very strategic, and I achieve my objective. And it is that, I think, in the far off distant past, that would have really frightened society. Women who didn't play by the rules, had odd objectives that other people didn't understand, and were happy because they had achieved them. And that was very, very threatening. And so back in the far off distant past, one might have been ducked in a ducking pond, or worse, burned at the stake. Now, luckily, if something makes you think you can do something, it's your good instinct. It's your inner witch. You don't have to wear makeup. You don't have to wear high-heeled shoes. Celebrate your face as you earn it. It tells the story of your life. Like it. It's a good face. I promise you, you have a great face. All of you. Brilliant faces. Telling me an amazing story of your life. So don't make your face thinner or flatter. Don't inject your lips to make you, because it just looks like you look like a person who looks like themselves, and then it looks as though you've injected yourself somewhere along the line with something that doesn't, so then you just look a bit odd. Even the best surgeon, you still, you don't look like yourself. So be proud of your face. And if you have a strong urge to do something unusual, which other people might say you can't do that, have a go. And allow your inner magician, your inner witch, your good instincts to drive that urge and see what you can do. Anyway, there you go. So here's Witchy Georgie making a witchy arrangement for number 1 Bruton. I'll show you when I've finished it. And there you are. That's sort of witchy and Halloweeny for Briar. Sort of. I love these. You see, I like a ghosty colour. I think these are quite ghosty colours. These are the sorts of colours that glow in the garden in the evening. As the light goes, these literally glow. Pale, ghosty colours. I love a ghosty colour. Anyway, so that's quite Halloweeny for Briar. So this Halloween, indulge your beautiful witch. If clever things occur to you, if your instincts are very strong, admire them. Think, there is my inner witch, revealing to me truths which I have learned because I have taken time to think and observe and ground myself strongly on the earth. And if somebody says, ooh, that's witchy, you say in a good or a bad way, because it might be in a very, very good way. Let's all allow our inner witches. Let's allow our interior magic. Allow ourselves to not necessarily conform. No high heels for me, thank you. Allow ourselves to be the people we are, without, so long as we're not making other people actively, I don't want to bang anyone on the head or steal anybody's lunch money. But that doesn't mean I have to conform to all the other societal norms. I can be myself. I'm allowed to be the person I am, and you are allowed to be the person you are. And that is possibly the good witch in us. Be who you really are. Don't be a people pleaser. Don't dress up so that other people tell you look lovely. Don't drink a glass of champagne because you want to be part of the gang. Do what suits you on your terms this Halloween. And if people say you're a witch for it, then put your hands on your hips and say, "Oh, am I?" Anyway, have a lovely Halloween, everybody. I'll see you very soon.